Ruben Diaz did not believe in the well, but he believed in overtime, and overtime was the only reason he was 3 levels down at 2 a.m. on the Saturday of a long weekend with a flashlight and a clipboard he was supposed to initial at each of the 9 checkpoints on the sub-basement loop. He'd done 8. The 9th was the old East Mechanical Room, past the renovation hoarding, and the renovation hoarding was where the smell started. Low tide. Out of nowhere, in the middle of Minnesota, the exact smell of the Gulf where his abuela used to take them. Shrimp boats and wet rope and the gray flats steaming at dawn. For one stupid, homesick second it made him smile. Then his flashlight caught the water on the floor. It hadn't been there on his last loop. A sheet of it, an inch deep, spreading out from under the hoarding and across the concrete in a slow black mirror. And it was moving. Not flowing downhill the way water should, but pulsing, sliding toward him, and then drawing back, toward him and back, like something was breathing at the far end of it.
Hello.
Which was the dumbest thing a man could say in a flooded basement at 2 a.m., and knew it even as it left him. The water answered, not with a voice, with a displacement, a long, heavy surge that ran the length of the corridor and broke cold over his boots. And in the wake of it, where the hoarding had been bolted to the wall, the plywood now hung peeled back from a hole punched clean through 4 feet of green-gray cement, a hole the size of a garage door, and the dark inside the hole was not empty. It uncoiled. Ruben's flashlight found a length of it and could not find the rest. A glistening flank the color of a drowned thing, ridged and finned and wider than he was tall, and it just kept coming, sliding out of the wall into the water with the patience of a tide, and where his light hit the front of it something the size of a manhole cover opened and was full of glass. He ran. He got perhaps 30 feet, far enough to grab the door handle of Checkpoint 8, far enough to feel the cold of the metal and to think, absurdly, of his initials in the little box, before the water rose up behind him in a wall and took him off his feet. And the last thing Ruben Diaz heard before the smell of the sea closed over his head was a sound no ocean ever made. His flashlight rolled to the wall and lay there shining, and after a while the water went flat and quiet and slid back the way it had come, taking everything with it. Maya found Eli Brandt in the facility shop at 7 the next morning because the facility shop was the only place in the building with coffee that hadn't come out of a machine, and because she had not slept. She'd gone home Friday night, opened her laptop, and pulled the digitized 1912 hospital records the Historical Society kept online, telling herself it was diligence and knowing it was something closer to itch. There wasn't much. A construction ledger. And in the ledger, on a Friday in the autumn of 1912, an entry for 41 barrels of Portland cement charged to the East Foundation, a quantity with no corresponding pour on any drawing, signed off by a foreman whose name was given only as Halloran, December. Deceased. The same week. No cause listed. 41 barrels of cement and a dead foreman, and a hole in the record where the reason should be.
You're the engineer.
Before she'd introduced herself, he was a small, neat man somewhere past 65, with white stubble and the hands of someone who had spent a working life inside walls. He did not look up from the pump he was rebuilding.
Kessler said somebody'd come asking about the East Foundation. I told him to let it lie. He didn't.
41 barrels of cement.
And sat down uninvited.
1912. No pour on the drawings. The foreman who signed for it died the same week. You know all this.
Now he looked up. Something moved behind his eyes, not surprise. Relief. Maybe the terrible relief of a man who has been carrying a thing alone and has just been told he doesn't have to anymore.
My granddad poured part of that. He was 19. Worked this site his whole life after, never would say why he wouldn't go in the east sub-basement, not for any money. On his deathbed he told my dad 3 things, and my dad told me one of them, because the other 2 he wouldn't repeat.
He set down his wrench.
He said they buried something alive down there because they couldn't kill it. He said the men called it the well because of what you could drop in. And he said...
Eli stopped.
Said what?
He said, don't ever let the salt run out.
Eli shook his head.
60 years I figured it for an old man's nonsense. Drainage, I told myself. Some superstition about the water table.
He wiped his hands slowly on a rag.
Then Tuesday the boys cut into it, and Thursday the moisture sensors in the East Mechanical Room started reading things they've got no business reading, and last night Ruben didn't initial checkpoint 9.
Maya's coffee stopped halfway to her mouth.
Ruben.
Night security. Loops automated, sends me a flag if a checkpoint gets missed.
Eli's voice had gone very flat. The flatness Maya recognized because she used it herself, the flatness people put over a drop.
I came in at 5 to find out why he hadn't called it in. His car's still in the lot. His flashlight's still on, down on 3, lying in 2 inches of salt water outside a hole in that cement that was not there on Thursday.
He looked at her.
I haven't called the police yet. I wanted somebody to see it first who'd believe their own eyes. You read records. You believe records?
I believe what holds and what fails. Show me the hole.
The water on level 3 had drawn back to a damp skin on the concrete by the time they reached it, but the smell had not gone anywhere. It was the smell from the crack, magnified into something physical, a pressure against the sinuses, the whole flooded weight of an ocean that wasn't supposed to exist. Ruben's flashlight still burned where it lay. Maya picked it up. The lens was scored with fine parallel grooves, 4 of them, evenly spaced, as if something had drawn a comb of bone across the glass. She made herself turn the light on the hoarding. The plywood was peeled back like the lid of a can. Behind it, where Friday there had been a 4-foot face of solid century-old cement scored by a single saw cut, there was now an opening she could have driven a car through, its edges not broken but burst, pushed outward, the rebar inside bent back in petals, the way a wall bends when the thing behind it has been leaning on it for 90 years and finally, patiently, won. And inside, the tomb was empty. Maya had braced herself for a lot of things on the walk down. A body, a trapped animal, some rational, nameable explanation she could write into a report with stamped letters after her name. She had not braced herself for empty, for the worst sentence in her profession, which is not it failed here, but it isn't here anymore. The chamber inside the cement was the size of a small room, its walls glazed smooth and faintly pearlescent, slick with the same green phosphorescence she had told herself she'd imagined in the crack. The floor was scattered with what she first took for stones, and then understood, with a slow cold turning in her gut, were not stones. They were bones, old ones and new ones. Cattle, maybe, from the years it had been fed in secret. A dog's collar, the tag long gone. And near the front, where the water came in, a man's wristwatch, the band snapped, the face fogged, the second hand still sweeping.
Ruben wore a watch.
He did not move to pick it up. Maya stood in the breached mouth of a 100-year-old grave that something had let itself out of, and the engineer in her, the part that lived in loads and tolerances and the honest arithmetic of what materials will and won't do, performed the only calculation it had left. Friday, the crack had been a hairline. Now it was a doorway. Whatever had widened it had not been pried from outside. The rebar bent out, which meant the thing that had spent 90 years getting bigger in the dark was no longer in the dark, and no longer in the cement, and somewhere in the wet arterial dark of the tunnels under a fully occupied hospital, it was getting bigger still.
The salt.
Her own voice sounded far away.
Your granddad said don't let the salt run out. Eli, what salt? What was keeping it down here for 100 years?
Eli Brandt looked at the empty tomb, and then up, in the direction of the floors above them. The wards, the elevators, the 700 beds of sleeping, anesthetized, post-operative people who had come to one of the most renowned hospitals in the country to be made well.
That is the one he wouldn't tell my dad.